Hey everybody, it's Ed. Before we start, I want to thank some brand new Patreon supporters. Bradley Rogers, Hannah, Brian Royal, Jeff Haynes, Bob Johnson, and David Bess. All these folks became Patreon supporters, and there are a lot of pretty cool benefits that come with Patreon, including a monthly Patreon exclusive podcast. And there's a newsletter, and there's discounts at the Mountain Prairie store, and a bunch of other stuff. If you want to learn about this or any other ways that you can help support the podcast, go to mountainandprairie.com/support. Thank you. This is the Mountain and Prairie Podcast. I'm Ed Robertson. My guest today is Cami Bakken. Cami is a river guide and outdoor advocate, and she currently serves as the director of the Freeflow Foundation and director of ambassador and grant programs for Rivers for Change. A native of Minnesota, Cami headed out west for college at Colorado State University, where she earned a degree in human dimensions of natural resources. Since graduating in 2018, she's been fully focused on helping others explore and appreciate the mountains and rivers of the American West, while also advocating for their protection and conservation. Cami and I met in 2023 when she was the facilitator on my Green River Freeflow Institute workshop through Dinosaur National Monument and the Gates of Lodore. During our weeks of preparation for the course and our 5 days on the river, I was so impressed by her expertise in outdoor education and river travel, and perhaps more importantly, by her ability to connect with a wide range of people in a sometimes intense wilderness setting. She's humble yet confident, earnest yet hilarious, and I credit her with so much of the success of that workshop. When I was in my late 20s and deep in a traditional career in the real estate business, I dreamed of having a life and career like Cami's, one that combined adventure and wide open spaces with purpose-driven work. So I wanted to chat with her in depth to learn more about how she has made it all happen. If, like I was, you're interested in learning about the realities of following a non-traditional but deeply fulfilling career in the outdoors, then you'll definitely learn a lot from Cami. We met up a few weeks ago at my house in the Springs and had a wide-ranging and funny conversation about her life, career, adventures, and crazy misadventures. We talked about what drew her to Colorado for college and some of the challenges of adjusting to such a new place and environment where she didn't know anyone. We talk about some of her wild experiences traveling in the West and internationally, including a few run-ins with cult-like groups, and how she took the leap to become a sea kayaking guide and eventually a Western river guide. We talk a lot about her commitment to pushing outside of her comfort zone, overcoming fear and discomfort, and why she's drawn to conservation work. We also discuss the financial realities of seasonal work and how her nonprofit career complements her guiding career. We talk about her career plans for the future, her roles with the Freeflow Institute and Foundation, and much more. It's worth noting that Cami and I will be heading out on the river again this summer for another Freeflow workshop, this time on Oregon's wild and scenic Rogue River, August 15th through 20th. As of this recording, there's still a few spots left, so you can follow the link in the episode notes to learn more about the workshop and apply. And as of this moment, you can use the secret code ED200, that's ED200, to get $200 off the tuition. A huge thank you to Cami for agreeing to let me ask her a bunch of weird questions, and more importantly, for all of her leadership and support on our river trips. Hope you enjoy. We're going to start it out with an easy question for you. Social security number and mother's maiden name. We were saying just before we started recording that we spent a week together on the Freeflow trip, but I really don't know all the details. Like, for some reason, when you were telling my wife where you're from earlier, I had that wrong in my head, where you were from.
Where did you think I was from?
Colorado.
Really?
I did. I don't know why I thought that. All right, where are you from?
Minnesota, originally.
What part?
Oh, man, it's this very small town called Randolph. The closest town to it that I usually tell people I'm from, but it's not true, is Northfield. And born there, went high school, the whole deal? Yeah, yes. So my parents, born and raised there. I live like a couple feet, that's not true, like a half a mile from my grandparents, which is where my mom grew up as well. And so my parents have lived there their whole lives. And my dad built the house. Like, it's a beautiful home. grew up there, went to high school there, and then not until college, I went to Colorado State University. And that was when my Colorado adventure happened.
And why Colorado State? Like, because I think about myself, and in the intro to this, I will have said, like, one of my motivations for talking to you is, like, when I was 23, if I was looking at you, I'd be like, I want to be like her. I want to be doing what she's doing. But starting with college, I never even considered leaving North Carolina.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. It's not like I was scared or anything, but like I just never considered it. So how did you consider leaving Minnesota for Colorado?
Yeah. I mean, I think if I were to look back, I think my middle sister, so my older sister, played a huge role in that. She was kind of the first to leave. She went to Northern California, had like embodied this outdoor lifestyle. And growing up, I lived on a farm. And so the way that I experienced outdoor spaces was much different than how I experience them now, which I'm grateful for, but had never gone camping. Didn't really, like outdoor sports, I had no idea about them, but I knew I wanted to go to a college with a rock climbing gym. And so I was like, I know I want to go out of state because I want to experience the world outside of Minnesota. And I know that I want the college to have a rock climbing gym, which is very
But had you been rock climbing, or is just like, I want to learn how to do it?
No. I hadn't been rock climbing. I hadn't been in Colorado. I mean, I went to a couple, like I toured a lot of different schools, but then I came to Colorado State University, and it probably like was influenced by the sunshine. It was like a beautiful sunny day. Yeah. We went to the climbing gym and I was like, I'm sold.
Yeah. Minnesota is the real winter. You know, people I think people not in Colorado think about Colorado as like snowy and all that, but I mean, it's, even if it is snowy, it's sunny and you can do stuff outdoors.
Yeah,
Minnesota
totally.
is a different deal. Wait, so you said sisters. Where are you in the pecking order of siblings?
I'm the baby.
And how many total? 3
sisters, both 8 and 11 years older than I.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I'm baby.
Okay. Yeah. And so when you decided to take off for Colorado for college, I mean, I guess at that point your parents had they'd already been through it. Did they care about you going that far? Were they supportive? What was the deal? Yeah,
they're so supportive. They had no problem with me wanting to go outside of Minnesota. I really don't think they expected me to stay in Minnesota at all.
Really?
Yeah. So they supported me through it all, and was like, if you like it, like, you should go there.
So when you showed up at Colorado State, did you know anybody?
No.
Like a single person?
No.
That is so, I mean, I think that's so cool, and I admire it because, like, when I showed up in college, I mean, there was already this social network that turned out it was not good to plug into that. But, you know, I just plugged right in and kept going. So, like, you show up. Yeah. How do you start, whether making friends / getting involved in the outdoor world? Because you don't know anybody and you don't have much experience in the outdoor world. So, like, what does it look like?
I mean, my journey probably wasn't the typical journey.
That's why I'm talking.
Okay. That's true. Okay. That's why I'm here. I went to CSU, had a random roommate, originally wanted to study health and exercise science. So that's what I said my major was going to be. And then I had a horrible time my first semester. I missed my friends at home. I was like not really making friends. And so I was like, I hate it here and I'm going to not go to school for a semester. And so I took a gap semester and I did this thing called WWOOFing. It's like Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms.
I had Jenna Pollard on the podcast who works for them, and I'd never even heard of that. Yeah, but she does a lot of stuff with the Patagonia workwear. Okay, and so that's how I was introduced, and she was awesome, and I learned all about that. So that's that's really cool. So explain that for people who don't know what it is.
Okay, yeah. So WWOOF, so Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. And the idea is like a work trade. So you look up, and each country, it's all over the world. Each country has their own site that you kind of pay a membership for. Mm-hmm. And there's these organic farms listed in every state or every region. And you kind of go through them. They have reviews. They have like a whole bio. It was almost like MySpace at the time, I felt like. Yeah. And then you reach out to them and see if they'd be willing to have you. And you work on their farm. You learn from them in exchange for board and food. Food. Yeah.
I never understood room and board.
Room and board. Yeah. That's what I was trying to say. I don't know. I thought board was room.
I think board is the food, maybe.
Okay. Well, anyways, you get fed. You get fed and you get to sleep in a place.
So like what were the big takeaways from that?
Okay. My experience with that was also kind of wild, but I think what it really did for me is like expanded my worldview quite a lot. Cause I went within the United States and then I also went abroad.
Where'd you go?
I went to Greece.
And where'd you go in the U.S.?
I went to Southern and Northern California.
Okay. What were the people like that you were with?
Well, the people that I went on the farms, like what the farms were. Okay.
Just let her, I mean,
okay,
it's not talking trash. It's just.
No, yeah. Okay. Well, so the one that I went to in Southern California was a cult.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a
we were
cult.
talking about Tenacious D before we started recording. And have you ever heard the song Jesus Ranch?
No, but that sounds like where I went.
I think you've told me a bit about this.
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, they have documentaries about them. They have there's one in Boulder, the Yellow Deli.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's them. That's who I went on the farm with.
And so you show up. Sorry, we've got a cat going crazy in the background here. So how long until you thought this is a little different than what I was expecting?
I mean, right. I think they picked me up from the train station and they're like, oh, do you know where you're about the place you're going? I'm like, yeah, I read their reviews. They were great. And then I arrived and noticed things looked a little different. Women were in certain locations, men were in certain locations, there was certain wear. And I was like, okay, this might just be like Amish is what I thought a little bit.
Sure.
And then they kind of laid down the rules of what it would look like. And we had like a sermon at 7 a.m., 7 p.m. I could only wear certain types of clothing. I could only go in certain places. And I was like, okay, this is
and you're 18.
Different. Yeah. I'm like a baby. Yes.
And so how long did you stay there before you
could only
bailed?
Stay for 2 weeks unless you joined.
Oh, so and it's like a trial period?
Yeah.
So after 2 weeks, you're out of there?
Yep.
Were you ever that's kind of funny now. It's a funny story.
It's so funny.
But was it scary?
Yes. I remember writing in my journal, like, do not get brainwashed. Like, don't fall into this cult. Because for a second, I was like, I kind of like it here.
Yeah.
Probably because there was this like one woman that I really connected with. And I was like, she's so cool. And I got to work in this beautiful garden.
And were your parents aware of what was happening?
I don't know if I told them until after, but I was like keeping in contact with them. I was like, yeah, this spot is a little different, but I don't think I told them until after.
That is wild.
Yeah.
I'll put a link to the Jesus Ranch video in the episode notes. Everybody needs to watch. It's a great song and funny video about Cammie's experience. That's crazy. And so
it's crazy.
Kind of moved along, got out of there, thankfully.
Yeah.
And then just kept going, ended up in Greece. How was that?
I mean, then I went to Northern California, which was a sex commune, which was Rolling Stones wrote an article about them. I mean, it was like a complete 180. I had no idea, by the way. I had no idea that this was the case going into it. And then I went to Greece. And as I went to Greece, I called the people that I'd been emailing with. I was taking a ferry because it was on Crete, which is an island off of Greece. And I was like, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. And she answered and she was like, who is this? And I was like, this is Cammie, your woofer. And she was like, oh no, we can't have you right now. And I was supposed to stay there for a month. And I was like in Athens. It was like nightfall. Like that was my place I was going to stay for a month. I don't know Greek. I'm like, okay, thanks, bye. And then just started bawling in the airport. I'm not really giving a good woofing review.
No, well, I mean, the thing is though, it's an adventure. You know? I mean, I would guess, I could be wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong, but you learned a lot more from that experience than if it had been flawless, everybody kind of like people that you were comfortable with.
Totally.
No problems to solve.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, I think about when my wife and I lived in Costa Rica, I was 31, so I was older than you. And I was just getting some of those lessons about when you're kind of stranded somewhere and don't really communicate. And so getting those lessons at age 18, assuming they don't break you or you don't get brainwashed or in the sex cult. I mean, thinking about my daughters getting involved in stuff like that.
I mean, it's crazy, but I think you're right. It did teach me a lot at that point in my life about adaptability and what do you do? And I think also this is what the world is like. The world isn't all rainbows and butterflies and roses or Justin Bieber, it's such a different look to the world that I had not experienced.
Well, in my experience, and tell me if you disagree, but there's one way to get tough and establish kind of resilience. And it's by being in very uncomfortable situations over and over and over. And uncomfortable is, we're talking about in a way like privileged stuff. We're not in a refugee camp, but still it's like being scared. I think that's kind of the only way to find the resilience.
Yeah.
That I've found.
Yeah.
Just being very uncomfortable. That's wild. All right. Yeah. So we could do a whole podcast.
I know.
And if the Yellow Deli people want to come, they can give me a call. I'll send you my phone number. Don't come to my house though. All right. So after that, you decided why go back to Colorado State? Why not go somewhere else?
Yeah, I think I had looked at other places and just didn't feel. This is a feeling actually that I've tried to find again in my adult life, but it didn't feel like home at the time. And Fort Collins had felt like home when I first got there. And I had reached out. I had been in touch with this one friend who convinced me to come back. And she was like, you got to give it another try. And so I was like, okay, you convinced me. Peer pressure is like my Achilles heel. And so I came back and ended up in a house with 6 other random people, very similar again to like coming to Colorado State University. They had all known each other. I didn't know them, and just like immediately fell in love with all of them and spent the rest of my college career living in that house with them. And a few of them had been in, it's called the Warner College of Natural Resources, which is then I changed my major to that because I had found like this outdoor space where I found community and I got excited and I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And then I just loved my time at Colorado State after that.
And so I would imagine it's a good mix of academics, studying hard, but then also playing hard. Like what kind of outdoor stuff were you doing while you were there?
Yeah. So that's when, as I mentioned, the climbing wall became like my second home. I was like, okay, well, I came to college because I wanted a climbing wall. I should probably use it. Yeah. And that's how I then got introduced to the outdoor program at CSU, where I became an outdoor program instructor. And so we did courses that were backcountry skiing, rock climbing, mountain biking, backpacking, hiking, kind of the whole gamut, and got paid to like learn these skills and then take other college students out and do these incredible trips.
At that point, did you think like, I want to keep this going after college, or was it just kind of like you were just immersed in it and thinking, oh, this is fun for now, but when college is over, I might do something else? Like what were you thinking at all about post-college? Yeah,
I think it was a combination of both. I think because that is something that I found in college, like the outdoor program, but I was also studying it. Like I was studying it. The major is called Human Dimensions of Natural Resources.
That's cool.
Which is, such a mouthful, but it's how humans interact with the environment in different ways. And one of those ways is through outdoor recreation. And so I think right after college, I fell in love with outdoor recreation because I found confidence in it. I found community in it. I experienced the world in a different way because of it, and also wanted to combine it with this other aspect of what I had learned, which was like collaborative conservation and storytelling and human connection with the environment. And so I was trying to find my way of connecting those two that felt good to me.
Did you graduate on time, or did it take longer to get out? Because I took a semester off myself and it took me longer.
Yeah. Somehow I finished on time.
Okay, nice.
Yep.
And so then you graduate.
Yep.
Then what?
So right after graduation, I was like, okay, I need some time to just experience the world again. Similarly to when I took the gap semester, like I just wanted to see the world in a way that I hadn't seen it before because I was confined to this space, which I loved, which is Fort Collins. And so I decided to take a 3-month road trip where I would deck out my car, which was a Toyota Highlander at the time, and then just live out on my car and travel around the American West. So that's what I did right after college.
Was it centered around recreation? Was it centered around visiting friends? Like what was the kind of structure to it, or what pointed your car in certain directions? Yeah,
I think it was maybe twofold. It was one, trying to find a place that I wanted to be. Yeah. So where I wanted to live after college. And then I wanted a lot of these places I had never been before. And so it was like me trying to just, again, discover the world. And there were other places where community was or friends were that I wanted to see along the way. But it really was like trying to figure out what the world looked like and what it could look like for me.
So any like super crazy or scary stories from that? That's what I always go to, even in like parties with other parents. They'll say something like, I went to Nicaragua surfing. I'm like, tell me the craziest thing that happened to you. And just get it really intense. But what was any crazy memories from that road trip? Because I would imagine being alone like that can be intense.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a little bit more lonely than I had expected it to be. And it was like I was living out of my car, which I had never done at this point before. And, you know, being like a young woman, I'm traveling in these like remote forested places where every horror movie is based out of.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, and I'm like, you know, kind of spooked out by ghosts too. So I was kind of spooked a little bit. I mean, the only like really crazy thing that happened, which is like maybe a spooky story, is one night I had heard something, and I always locked my doors and I slept with pepper spray just in case.
Yeah.
And I had heard something, got pretty freaked out, and then was like, okay, don't open your eyes. You don't want to see what's out there.
Yeah.
And then I was...
Where were you parked?
I was parked...
What was the setup?
So I think it was in Oregon, and it was just on BLM land in a like forested area. No one was around me. And I fell back asleep, and then I woke up the next morning and I had seen... like outside of my window, it was like all foggy, but there were like handprints and then a face print against my window.
Like you could really see it?
I could see it. Yeah. And I was like, I got to get the heck out of Dodge. And that was probably the spookiest thing that happened to me on that trip, which is great for that being the spookiest thing.
That's scary though. It's even scarier that somebody would look through a window by smashing their face against the window. Like, just look through the window. You don't need to put your nose and like your cheeks against the window. Did you ever sleep like in cities, like within the city?
Oh, no. I purposely planned out my road trip to not have to do that.
All right. So you get towards the end of that 3 months. Mm-hmm. What's the next step?
Yeah. So I get towards the end. It was actually during this road trip where I had thought about applying for jobs, or I actually at this point had. And one of the things that I had did, which kind of like dictated my path and the way that I interacted with jobs and careers, is I just reached out to someone at Protect Our Winters and just like had a conversation with them. And I think also just submitted like a cover letter and resume. They weren't even hiring at this point. I just like really loved what they were doing. And I got a call from Tori Udall offering me a job. An internship.
Sure.
Which at that point I was like, heck yeah.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know, I've not that much work experience. And so he had just offered this to me to work at Protect Our Winters. And I was like, yeah, this makes sense to me.
Where were you based for that? In Salt Lake?
In Boulder.
Oh, in Boulder. Okay. Because that's where, was Tori in Boulder at that point?
Yeah. So everyone at that point was in the office in Boulder, and it was like really small team.
Tori was moving. He lives remote. I mean, he lives in Salt Lake now and worked remote, I guess.
Yeah, as we're telling everyone there.
Yeah. So, all right. And so that's quite a change from being on the road, kind of doing what you wanted to do, to all of a sudden having responsibilities and having a group of people that you want to impress.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
I did. I loved it. Yeah. I mean, it was working in an organization that was doing really good work in the world. They are working on climate change advocacy within the outdoor space. So again, like this intersection of things that I'm really passionate about, and also had a center of community, which is something that I was also finding out was such an important aspect to the work that I wanted to do. And so it was only supposed to be for like 2 months because it was for the midterm elections at that point. And then they kept every month after that, they kept extending it and extending it and extending it. And I ended up being there for almost a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so you're in Boulder, you were living in Boulder?
Living in Boulder.
That? Okay.
Yep.
What year was that?
This was 2018 midterm elections. Yes.
We may have overlapped. I can't remember when I moved here. I think it was 2018. No, 2017. I won't have missed you. But, and so then when did guiding and like the professional outdoor, education or whatever, when did that come into play? Yeah.
So after that internship, or kind of during it, I almost had I had cabin fever, where Boulder is not that far from Fort Collins. It's an hour. And the whole point of me doing this road trip was to expand my horizons and go elsewhere. And here I am going an hour south of Fort Collins. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to settle down into this space right now. Like I know that there's more out there that I want to experience. And I'd miss the outdoor instructing and how that felt like in my body and with the people that I work with. And so I was like, okay, I think I want to guide again. Like I'm young. there's so many things I still need to learn. And so then I was like, okay, I think I need to step away from this 9 to 5 and start guiding. And that is when I kind of started my guiding career and moved to Santa Barbara, which is where I was a sea kayak guide off of the Channel Islands.
So how did you learn to do that? I mean, because sea kayak.
Yeah. Okay.
There could be a lot of potential for kayaking, but sea kayak.
Totally.
How'd you get into that?
Yeah. Also a funny circumstance. I just applied for the job and got it. And then I remember at training, which was at the Channel Islands, which are these beautiful islands off the coast of California, but the whole tours are like in these sea caves and you really have to understand the ocean. It can get pretty gnarly out there. And I remember the first training day, everyone's like, well, everyone has sea kayaked before. And I was like the only one where I was like, no, I haven't. I don't know what I'm doing here. And everyone else was like, did
you have any water experience? Like
not
big
at this
water?
point.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
That's a lesson for my 23-year-old self listening to this. It's like, there's just part of it where you just gotta go for it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a lot of people would have been scared, myself included, to apply for the job because like I don't know anything about sea kayaking or versus like I want to do this.
Yeah.
I want to do it.
Yeah.
And then it's up. They made the decision. They hired you.
I know they did. They did. And I think that it continues to be a thing in my life where same with like, you know, taking a gas semester or living out my car where I don't know if I have like this ignorance is bliss where I don't have this fear until I'm in it. And I'm like, oh, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. Until you're just like forced to get outside of your comfort zone. Yeah. And now it's almost like become a habit to do that, which is kind of nice.
That is nice. And I think you hear that a lot. I was listening to a podcast last night, actually, with some musician, and they were asking him how he had the guts to go and do all this stuff at age 18 or 19. He's like, mm-hmm. I was naive and kind of crazy. But I think as people get older, they forget or they lose that or they become pessimistic, whatever. But I think if you can keep that, you know, like it sounds like you've been able to keep that, just continue, not that you're naive, but just this idea of like, I can figure it out.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not just try?
Yeah.
You know? So how long were you out there in Santa Barbara?
So that was also a little less than a year that I was out there. And from that point, I mean, it was so awesome. I got to meet incredible people. I got to live in Santa Barbara, which was beautiful. But I think I learned from that I wanted like more purpose and intention behind if I were to continue guiding, I wanted it to be really purposeful instead of just like bringing people who paid money, who could afford it, and then like say goodbye. Like I wanted there to be more connection than that.
And so what were you drawn to? Like what was the ideal at that point? If you're like, I don't have enough connection here. Yep. What were you thinking about?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't sure. I was trying to seek that out. And then something popped up on my radar where it was in a nonprofit focused on outdoor education that did multi-day river trips.
Oh, okay.
And that was based in Moab. And in between that time of coming, you know, moving from Santa Barbara back to Colorado, this had popped up on my radar. And I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for, is like this intention and purpose, but still being a guide. And
so what were those trips? Or no, first of all, so you go to Moab, I guess, get the job.
I got the job.
Did you have any whitewater experience?
No.
I love it. And so what are you like 24 at this point? 23?
Let's see. It was, yeah. I think I was probably 24 or 23. I must have been 23.
And so this is like where it's direct instructions to 23-year-old Ed, who was wearing cufflinks at Merrill Lynch in Wilmington, North Carolina. Being a river guide is like one of the coolest things in the world. And I think a lot of times people think, like when they think about, I want to pack up and move out west, it's like be a river guide in the summer and do something with skiing in the winter. You know, that's kind of like the stereotypical thing.
Totally.
So you got no experience whitewater rafting. You do have experience outdoor education, teaching people stuff.
Yep.
You get stuff done. You got a varied but interesting resume, but you're only like 2 years out of school.
Yep.
And so you show up, then what? Like you don't know anything about whitewater rafting. You're in Moab.
Yeah.
Then what? What do you do?
I mean, so the first trip that we take is on the Colorado River, and it's like a 7-day training trip.
So all employees of the organization, they're teaching you. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Fortunately though, for me, I'm not the only one in this boat. There's other literally.
Yeah, you got to learn.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. So other people haven't had boating experience. Some of them had. And so we're kind of like literally thrown into this guiding position where we're rowing, we're paddling, and they're teaching us as we go, but we're learning how to read water, and we're learning how to operate as a team, and we're learning how to like guide at the same time. And it's like this immersive experience, because it's not like these little day things. It's like you're on the river for 7 days with this small group of people, like really being vulnerable by learning these new skills as an adult that are like kind of dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It could get sideways real quickly.
Real quick.
Well, that was one of the takeaways on our trip on the Green River is that water wasn't necessarily big. Like, it didn't seem like big water, but it was extremely technical. For some, there was probably like 5 or 6 rapids that were but I didn't even know enough to appreciate how hard it was.
Yeah.
I knew that there was something going on there, but I just didn't know enough to understand the skill that it took to get through there without getting flipped.
Yeah, totally.
And so it's just kind of a whole different way of kind of being in the outdoors, of understanding how to read that water and go with it. So any crazy stories, like any embarrassing things happen as you're learning?
I mean, there's probably lots of embarrassing things that happened. Like, the beauty of that too is you're making so many mistakes on that.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to be able to learn like what you did wrong. And fortunately, during that time, like, they don't throw you into like class 3, 4, 5 rapids. You're like still just learning how to navigate flat water or like riffles. It was like a sufferfest for sure.
Really?
It was like downpouring water. The wind, like especially in the spring in the desert, the winds are insane. So we're like kind of not even moving at times because the wind is just like plummeting against us.
And so like I'm kind of jumping around, but as you're doing this and you're having these adventures and learning this stuff, like, what are your friends from college doing? Like the ones you hung out with, is it all over the place? Are they following similar paths? What are they doing?
No. And I think about this all the time. They had done different trajectories, probably similar to the trajectory that you had done, where they got jobs right after college, kind of like 9 to 5, or like nursing or entrepreneurial stuff or business focused stuff, like things, or teaching, whatever the case may be. But none of them had done an outdoor focused path that I had. So from who I grew up with, like, there wasn't that connection or that I could really come back to. And sometimes even when I talk about it, I'm like, do you guys know what it's like? Like, does this make sense to you? Yeah. So it's totally different than any of the friends or community or family that I have.
Did you ever question yourself, like, man, I should be doing a more traditional job? Or were you just like, no, this is exactly or this is not exactly, but I'm on the right path?
I mean, I think I question it all the time.
Oh, really?
I think it's so hard not to when you're constantly surrounded by it, whether that's like your friends or just like the world at large. But I think a couple of things that helped me stay on the path that I am still on and that I love is that, 1, my parents were super supportive.
Yep.
And then 2, I kept coming back to this thing of like, well, what makes you happy? Like, what makes your heart happy? And anytime that I tried to veer away from that, or like when I had to do supplemental jobs to like have a livable wage or income, or in between time, like nothing made me feel the way that I do when I'm doing these outdoor pursuits.
Well, that's a question I want to ask you though. I was talking with Christine Tompkins, who I'm going to put that podcast out tomorrow, but I had a question for her about happiness versus contentment, because I would imagine there are a lot of times, like you're talking about the training. I mean, Sufferfest, wind, rain, probably just uncomfortable. In the moment, you're not like, wow, this is awesome. So I'm always thinking about what are people seeking? Are they seeking happiness, or are they seeking contentment? Because when you add it all up, you get this level of contentment that comes from doing the work and from being in these uncomfortable situations, but it's not necessarily fun at the time. Yeah. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, type 2 fun at its finest. You know, I think for me, and maybe something that I'm like still trying to understand, is that you almost get this sense of like survival. You're like, okay, I survived that. Like, that was pretty intense. And also, a lot of people who have been thrown in that situation, it's like fight, flight, or freeze. And then you realize that, especially when you're with other people and you have done it together, you've experienced this like kind of intense thing together. Like, there's like this connection that you form because of that. And not only are you surviving, you're like, oh, my body did that. That's crazy. And my body and my mind, but also I did it with this human being that we have a connection that no one else will have. So I think like the outdoor pursuits is one thing, but the people aspect for me is an integral part to that.
I agree. I talk about this nonstop on this podcast, so apologies for people, but the book Tribe by Sebastian Junger, and this idea of, how this how community comes together through kind of shared purpose. Yeah. And it's very strange because like me and you, for example, we spent 7 days total, 5 days on the river.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like you're a better friend than a lot of these damn parents and stuff I see around here every day. I've been seeing them for like, 10 years and just having bullshit small talk with them,
Yeah.
But like a really intense experience together there's something, I don't know. I think it's in our DNA and most people don't have it.
Yeah.
I mean, the people listening to this podcast probably do in one form or another, but just average Americans, no.
Yeah. I think that space is like sometimes hard to come by now.
I think people it's so important, I think. All right. So so what were the big lessons you took from that? You're learning to guide, getting better at the education component. How old were the students on this thing? Man,
they ranged from a huge range. It was like, I think the youngest was 3rd grade and then the oldest was college.
Okay.
So it was a very broad range of education, which was really cool. And I think something that I took away from that and tried to incorporate into every part of my life now is that in those spaces, especially multi-day river trips or any outdoor space where you're together on end with no distractions, is that there's this playfulness and this silliness that comes out and this like kid that has been just kind of like stuffed down or society has told you to like keep it quiet, and it just comes out when you're in these spaces, no matter how old you are.
I agree. I mean, we saw that on our trip together.
Totally.
With people ranging from probably late 50s to early 20s.
Yeah. Yes.
After like 3 days, just different people.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that was a seasonal type job.
Yep.
That wraps up in the fall, I guess, or you're done in the fall. Then what do you do? And again, this is like what I would have been asking you when I'm like, I want to live that life, but that would have been a concern of mine is like, what's next? How do I keep making money? How do I pay the bills? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that's when maybe the harsh reality set in of you do have to continue to have a job to make money to live, especially if you want to live in these really beautiful places that are kind of expensive to live in. And so during the in-between times, that was always a question. I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? And so I would end up finding these like odd and end jobs, whether that's like retail or serving or things that I could just get by for like the winter months until I could go back into my season. And it wasn't until, it was pretty soon after that, because again, for me, that was like, okay, I am able to live in these places because I'm doing these odd and end jobs, but it still doesn't have this purpose that I'm looking for. Yeah. And I don't want my purpose to just be in one season. I want it to be the whole year, my whole life. And that's when I dove more into nonprofit work, which I had experience with Protect Our Winters, but wanted to come back into it because that is where the purpose and intention, and also, the river guiding I had done was also nonprofit. So I wanted to find a way to be able to do that year round.
And so what you had Protect Our Winters on your resume. What other organizations have you worked for over the years? Like nonprofit types? Yeah.
So Protect Our Winters, Canyonlands Field Institute was the Moab nonprofit that did the multi-day river trips, outdoor education. I had worked for REI in like a corporate social responsibility capacity.
Nice.
And then I got involved with an organization that also has a nonprofit attached to it called Freeflow Institute, and then the Freeflow Foundation.
So how did you initially find out about Freeflow? Like, when did that come into your radar?
Yeah. So Freeflow had used a campus. So Canyonlands Field Institute, that Moab organization, has this like field campus.
Okay.
And Freeflow had just done a trip with Heather Hansman and used our field campus. And they had only used it. They didn't go on the river with us. They just used that portion of our organization. And I had looked them up because I was like, Freeflow Institute, and had looked through their programs, their courses, and like what it was about. And I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And so that's how I found it. And I just sent Chandra Brown almost like a fangirl email of like, looked into your organization. This is what I want my life to be about. I want to be involved in your organization. Like, will you talk to me? Like, would you have a moment to chat? And she did.
That's awesome. And so what year was this?
Man, this would have been 2021 that I started this conversation.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so up until that point, like what was your, and you know, people who've listened to podcasts can listen to 2 different episodes I've done with Chandra to learn all about free flow, but were you interested in writing, creativity, art kind of thing throughout, you know, had that been a part of your journey?
Yeah.
Up to that point?
Yes and no. I had always loved writing and had never considered myself a writer, but loved writing, incorporated into like different parts of my life. But what actually had stood out to me is that Chandra or Freeflow had done a trip with natural resource law and policy. It was like a lot of people and places what it was called. But in college, I had done this course where I really loved policy. And that was a surprise to me because right before that, I was like, I hate the government. I would never do anything with policy. And then through that class, I realized that policy shapes every part of our lives.
Oh, sure.
Especially the outdoors. Oh, yeah. And so I saw that Freeflow Institute had a course like that, and they were on a river trip, and they combined the two. And that like really changed the trajectory of what I wanted.
Did you go on that trip?
No, but
you just, that's what kind of drew you into the organization.
Yeah, that's what drew me in. And then once I had that conversation, I got invited to work for Freeflow Institute. And then I went on the trip as like a shadow facilitator. Yes.
So you go on that as a shadow facilitator.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the whole thing? I don't want this whole conversation to just be like an ad for Freeflow, but I kind of do because it's such an unreal organization.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So what were your thoughts when you got done with that? So you go on that trip. What was the takeaways?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll back up a little bit and say that Chandra and I had a conversation through that whole year before she invited me to come up to work for Freeflow. And I, at that point, like really wanted to go down that path and was like, I'm going to move to Missoula all summer. Like, have me at your disposal. And so then I went on almost every Freeflow trip as like a guide, a shadow, a helper, whatever.
Did you really?
Yeah. I just like immersed myself in that space.
So like, who were some of the teachers or artists that you went with?
Yeah. So I went on 3 trips. And so the first one was Chris Latre.
Okay. Yep.
And the second one,
he's been on the podcast, by the way. We'll link to that.
Yeah. Yeah. He's awesome. That was a really cool trip. The second one, oh yes, David James Duncan. What was the second trip? Also a guide. So I was able to row on that one. Same with Chris's. I was a guide on both of those. And then I went on the Law, People, and Place course, which was with Professor Bryan and Professor Mills, who are professors at the University of Montana.
Okay.
Yes. And so then after that course, and I felt pretty lucky because I really wanted to be almost like a student on that course. I wanted to learn as much as I could from them, which was awesome. And Chandra let me do that. And I'm so grateful for it. And I think I was kind of sold after that about wanting to intertwine my guiding life, my advocacy life, and like my almost now like a policy life, all of those intersections in still having a platform of storytelling. Like I wanted to just do it all. So yeah, it totally shaped the way that I decided to move forward.
Yeah, those are some all-stars that you went with. David James Duncan, he's one of the most interesting people I've ever met in my whole life. Yeah. And I've met a lot of interesting people, but he's on a different level. But obviously, the thing about him that's so interesting is that he's very, very humble and very self-deprecating, and yet he's kind of tuned into a different part of the universe 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So talk about the Freeflow Foundation, how that came to be, because you're in charge of that, correct?
Yeah. So right after that course, right after the Law, People, and Place course, Chandra and I were essentially on a road trip together. And we were just talking about the future of free flow and this Freeflow Foundation, which at this point I really hadn't known that much about or understood what it was. And we just kind of had this brainstorming session, and we were talking about the foundation and like what to do with it. And she's like, so do you want to run it? Do you want to do it? She's like, the job is yours.
Nice.
And I was like, okay, sure. And at this point I had worked for nonprofits, understood, the way that they run, but I had never run an organization. Like I've never run a nonprofit, nor done any of the operations or anything like that. I just knew very little, but was now in charge, at least semi in charge of the organization.
And so that the Freeflow Foundation is, you explain what it is. I'm not going to try to explain it.
I wish you would. The Freeflow Foundation essentially provides scholarships, guidance, gear, support for Freeflow Institute participants. And so the idea is to elevate these voices that are often underheard in outdoor creative spaces and to provide a platform and support to continue their path.
And it's a nonprofit, so it can go out and fundraise, get money from foundations, things like that. And then the money is just basically used to be applied to free flow trips, correct?
Exactly.
And so you guys have tons of scholarships, I mean, from like American Rivers.
So in the past, we've had American Whitewater, American Rivers, American Prairie, and NRS scholarships. Yep.
Here's a question for you about kind of managing the people on these trips, whether it's any of the guiding you've done, but it's just something I'm curious about. And I can cut this if you don't want it in here. But you hear a lot now. My wife works in higher ed with college kids.
Yeah.
And you hear a lot about college kids now and kind of a wide range of people, but they really they seem to value safety and not being uncomfortable and that kind of thing. And, whether you're talking about mentally, physically, whatever.
Yep.
And then you bring them on trips like this, where part of the benefit or part of the thing you're doing is you're being in dangerous locations and dangerous situations and having to kind of work through that. Yeah. It's like, how do you balance, particularly with like younger folks, this desire for safety and for calmness and for not being uncomfortable with the whole point of being there, which is we're going to be uncomfortable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's a fine balance. I think there's something to be said for advocating for spaces where you want to feel comfortable and safe. And I think that's so valid and fair. And I want to offer those spaces up and make sure that people can like have a voice and have a place to share and be vulnerable. And at the same time, when you're in these outdoor spaces, there's an inherent risk, whether you're talking about a physically inherent risk or perhaps mentally challenging or uncomfortable situations. And I think you can front load that as much as you want to until you get onto that space. And that's when people figure it out on their own. And they're like, okay, I'm uncomfortable or I'm outside of my comfort zone. And I'm there to like talk about it and to be there for them. But it really is like a personal journey that you have to go through. And I don't think people realize that until they are in these spaces. And sometimes there is a little bit of tough love. You're like, this is the situation that we're in. And we can't change anything about it, but what we can change is how we're reacting to it. So I think there have only been like a couple situations where I feel like I've really had to like say, this is expedition mentality. Yeah. Like we have to work together. We have to be adaptable. We're in the elements and this is inside of our box of control, but there's a lot of things outside of this box of control. On
the few times when you have had to do that, has it like when it's all said and done and the trip's over, did they break through? Like, did they find the strength to move through it, or were they just kind of a mess for the whole time?
I mean,
half and half.
Yeah, I think it's half and half for sure. It's half and half, and I do think people, whether in that moment you're like, oh, you're perhaps not maybe going the path that I thought you were going to go or that I wanted you to go, they still find strength in it. And they still there's so much room for reflection after trips like this. And so, yeah, I think in one way or the next, they do have that opportunity to reflect on how they handled situations. The
thing you said about you can't control all this stuff and you can control, the way you react to it. That I did a semester of Knowles during college, and that was the takeaway. Yeah. Like that was the big, we were there for 3 months, the whole deal, all over the place. And when I think about like, what was the lesson? Like what was the main lesson? And that was it. Cause I remember we'd been there for like 2 months and we did a small group expedition in the Olympic Mountains without instructors. And it was end of October on the Olympic Peninsula, and it rained and it was like 37 degrees and rain for a week. Yeah. And I remember the first 2 or 3 days of that, I was just furious. Just like so mad. And I was like, I'm so sick of this rain. I remember I have to wring out my sleeping bag at night to get in. And then after a while, I was like, all right, I can't control any of this weather. Yeah. I can't control how these other dudes are acting. It was all dudes, 9 guys. So we were all like fighting and yelling at each other. I was like, all I can control is my attitude. Yeah. And that was it. I mean, and I think that's the if you can really get that in your head, God, what a powerful lesson,
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have gotten it otherwise.
Yeah, totally.
I'm hard-headed though. You probably figured it out before I did. Talking about the trip that me and you did together on the Green River, what were your takeaways from that? Like how did that one, I'm not saying like, how did it compare? Actually, let's talk about how much better it was. No, but like what did you see happen in that? Cause I was so, you were like my psychiatrist. Cause like every day I'd be like, I don't know what I'm doing. Am I doing all right?
Yeah.
But like, what did you take away from that trip? And like, how did it compare, good or bad, to other ones you've led?
What did I take away for me or for others?
Just in general, like what you saw with that amazing group we had and all these hilarious people that just got more hilarious every day.
So funny.
Like what was the big, like as you being a pro in this world of taking people in the outdoors and watching them evolve, what were the takeaways from that thing?
Yeah, I think the takeaways are always validations that I've discovered time and time again. Earlier, I mentioned like this goofiness, this silliness, this playfulness, and this group completely embodied that. Like, as we've mentioned so many times, like that's the most I've laughed in so long.
Yes.
Like my gut hurt probably 24/7. Like it's like constantly. I feel like I was trying to like stop laughing at times. And so I think that was just validating how these spaces can bring out this childlike and playfulness, but also these really genuine conversations and productive conversations and conversations you don't get that often unless you're in these spaces where like you push vulnerability and you are open to other people's perspectives. And I think in like the, real world, you can walk away from those or you do it behind a screen. And this is not the case. Like that is not an option for you here. And so I think that is just validating of how much humans can connect, even if we're so different from each other. And I think also a validation that I just get every time I'm done with any trip, any multi-day river trip that I'm on is it's just so good to be there outside, like in the world, disconnected
is huge.
Yeah. And you do face like a lot of just like struggles, whether it's internal or external, whether it's the weather, whether you're like going through something, there's just so much space to think and decompress, but also to connect and have fun. And I think the takeaway too from that trip is like all of these things can exist at the same time. Yeah. Like happiness and sadness and frustration can all exist and you can appreciate the intersection of them all.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one thing that makes perfect sense looking back, but I just hadn't really thought about it going forward is, the trip was kind of my curriculum or whatever, for better or worse. I think the thing that I found to be the coolest was after, maybe 3 days, if I had disappeared, the course would have been just as productive because everybody was learning from each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like totally. I probably came out of there learning more than anybody because I was able to learn from all the other participants. And then I know for a fact that a lot of the folks who did not know each other beforehand are still in touch and they're like in writing groups together. And I mean, I won't go into specific names, but I know that there were a few people who felt kind of isolated in their creative journeys. Yeah. And they are very, very, very talented in what they do, but just because of either, where they live or whatever, they didn't have any friends that are super creative, and now they do. Yeah. And it holds them accountable. Totally. And I found that to be really, really powerful.
Yeah. It's just inspiring.
It's very inspiring.
Yeah.
And it's inspiring to find all these people, because most of my life I felt like I'm a complete weirdo or I'm crazy, and I probably am, but I've found these other people that think about things the same way I do. And I felt like that was a perfect example of that. Yeah. Because if you looked at if you looked at everybody on a spreadsheet, as I did beforehand, it didn't seem, if you just glanced at it, you're like, none of these people have anything in common. And then it's like this bond forms. And I'm with you on the laughing. That was really, really
so fun.
Well, no, you did awesome on that thing, and it wouldn't have been half of the trip it was without your help. So,
too kind.
No, it's true. You helped me. I was so nervous for that thing. Kind of jumping around again. When you think about being a guide or being an outdoor educator, that is a different skill set than being a good guide or being a great outdoor educator is a lot different than if you had your own boat and you went out and did it on your own. You're like a badass individual. There's a much different skill set required to deal with the people. So like, what do you think makes for a good guide?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, guiding is such hard work. You're on 24/7.
I am so impressed, whether mountain guides, river guides, whatever it is. I could not do it. I could do it for 5 minutes and then I'd be fired.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's true, but you do have to be
15 minutes,
20 minutes. We'll give it 20. Yeah. You have to be on all the time, and you have to not only be good at what you do, so reading the water and being able to have good technique, but you also have to be good with people. Like, I think that is probably the biggest part. And you have to be okay with like doing a lot of the groundwork. You do all the groundwork. So I think for me, like part of being a good guide and like good at your job is, yes, like doing the things right, but also like finding ways to bring connection to this space. And also we get to experience these rivers the whole summer for months on end, for days on end. And we become stewards and advocates of these places. And so I think that is also a component, is to be able to tell the story of the places that you're bringing people down and advocating for it, or at least finding connection and stories that inspire other people to create their own connection. Like, they don't have to know every fun fact about the river you're on, but to, just invite a space where people can connect. And guides are kind of responsible for that. They nurture that space.
Well, I feel like on our trip, the guides, Dinosaur River Expeditions, major plug for them. Mm-hmm. Like, they're awesome. If you want to go down the Green River, go with them. But our guides, all three guides were amazing and hilarious and pros, just absolutely like technical pros, but they participated in most of our events.
Yeah.
Like they and made it much, the trip was much better because of their participation.
Oh, 100%.
But, everything went, I think everybody in our group was awesome. There was no drama, nothing other than just like maybe too much laughing. Yeah. But I was so impressed with that. But then when I think about that's probably in a lot of ways, not on free flow, but on river trips, that's the exception, because there's generally always some bad egg or somebody that's got attitude problem or something. So not to be negative, but what makes for a bad guy? Like when you've seen, I'm sure you've seen them. Mm-hmm. They're not good. And I heard horror stories of certain guides and the way they act and this and that.
Yeah.
What's a bad guide?
I mean, I think there's also, with guiding, is patience. Like, I think people can blow their heads off pretty quickly, either with guests or with each other. Oh, that's a huge thing with guiding too, is you're working together as a team. Like, you have this group of 6 or less people, or maybe more, that you are working together to bring this group of people down the river that you're working side by side with. And I think folks who like can't, self-regulate or work together or invite participation or collaboration with their guide team, that just grinds my gears so much. And it doesn't get you far in any capacity, either with guests or with your coworkers. And your coworkers, like, you are relying on them to have your back, both for like safety and survival. Sure. And you're also in charge of so many people's lives. Yeah.
The stakes are very high. I don't know what I'd do if I had a bad guide. Like an asshole. You'd
probably say something, don't you think?
I don't know. My old self would have. Now I don't know what I'd do.
Or you just journal about it. You probably just like make fun of them. Or something.
It would be very passive aggressive.
Yeah.
I'll give him a little jujitsu guillotine choke. I just learned the omoplata. It's like twisting their arm around, ripping their shoulder out.
Oh, really? That sounds like a yoga move, a yoga pose.
It is, until you crank too hard, and then it's very violent.
Do you know that because it's happened to you?
Oh yeah, everything's happened to me. I don't even know what they're called when it happens to me. Here are 2 questions for you. One is, in the space of the outdoor world or conservation, or just, it could just be more broad, but like, who do you admire? Do you have mentors in the world, in that world, or do you have people that you may not have even met, but you've read about them or fans of what they do? Like, who do you admire in the space that you operate in? Yeah.
I feel really lucky to admire a lot of people, but have a lot of really wonderful mentors at different places in my life, all the way from like starting my outdoor journey to now. And some of them have been my age. Some of them have been older. Yeah. I mean, I've had so many incredible people guide me throughout my life. I mean, yeah. Should I list them? Like what?
Yeah. Some, I mean, if there are any. top of your mind.
Yeah, totally. I mean, starting off, like there's this, I have a friend in Cape Bolin and she is this badass mamma jamma in the outdoor space. And I think she's like the perfect embodiment of everything that I want.
What's her name?
Cape Bolin.
Okay.
She is so goofy. She's so strong. She's so capable. She has been my role model throughout like every endeavor of my outdoor career. And then just being able to have women mentors, honestly, is like a huge thing for me. I've had that through like nonprofit work. Lindsay Burgoyne, who worked for Protect Our Winters, was a huge mentor for me. And then moving down this space, I think, especially with guiding, the company that I work for in Idaho called Canyons River Company has an incredible mentorship. Like there are so many people who have offered up space and time and guidance and continue to do so. And I'm really lucky to continue to learn from them. I mean, Shonda Brown's like a huge mentor for me.
Definitely.
100%.
Yeah.
And I've just like been a fangirl of her ever since I've heard her first episode. Shonda Brown's episode was my first Mountain Prairie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She's a damn badass.
She's badass.
Across the board. That's really cool. Yeah. That's been one of the things with this podcast. That has been the best part is just meeting all the cool people, you know, and you know, the kind of mentorship that comes through these conversations because I get to learn from them.
Yeah.
And that's been kind of one of the purposes of it all is just to learn from all these amazing people. And they're out there, you know, when I was in the world of Merrill Lynch or commercial real estate or whatever, the people that were more times than not, the people that were really good at it, I didn't really admire them. You know, personally, like they were good at their jobs, but it's not like I wanted to be like them.
Yeah.
And now like in these outdoors, you know, the outdoor spaces, whether conservation or outdoor recreation or whatever, I do want to be like those people.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. It's kind of like there are almost too many to choose from.
I know there's so many people doing good work in the world. Like Brooke Hess, who did the Grand Salmon. She's younger than I am, but she has combined advocacy and outdoor adventure in an incredible way. And I think she probably doesn't know that I'm a fangirl of her, but I'm a fangirl of Brooke Hess for sure. Also, the opposite spectrum. Do you know who Katie Lee is? She was in Damnation.
Oh, yeah.
She's like goddess of Glen Canyon is what they've coined her. She has since passed away in the past couple of years, but she has been my tried and true mentor who was born long before I was and has just like guided truly who I want to be when I grow up. That's and now, awesome. But yeah.
All right. Thinking about all your experiences up to this point, and even though you've been going for a long time, you've done a lot of cool stuff. Like when I was your age, I pretty much just moved out west.
Yeah.
Like I think for me, stuff kind of started when I was 27. So like in a lot of ways, you're just getting started. So what do you think about like the next 10 years or like, I know you've mentioned when we were on our trip, you talked about potentially thinking about law school. Like I'm not asking you to nail it down, but like, what are the options?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've created in my mind this trifecta of things that I want to incorporate into my future. And hopefully like now too is I think I always want to be connected to river spaces. Well, actually the trifecta includes all the river things, but I think guiding in particular, I think that's an incredible thing about both storytelling and advocacy and conservation as you know the landscape. You don't just like read about it as you're truly experiencing it. And I never want to lose that because I always want to be connected to these landscapes that I'm advocating for. And then, so that's the third of it. The next third is to incorporate more of the advocacy. So that insert law school. Western water policy is what I found that I'm really passionate about, specifically the Colorado River Basin, which is such a hot topic, and quite a few, you know, even your podcasts have included the Colorado River Basin, and has so many intricacies in it that this is the time to be involved, and I totally want to be involved in it. And there's a lot of innovation that can happen in this space.
Oh yeah. I got a podcast coming out in week after next about that specific thing and about how bringing in tribal and indigenous knowledge into the Colorado River Basin policy stuff. So
yeah.
And then what's the third?
Yeah. The third is this piece of my outdoor life that I feel really passionate about, but maybe it doesn't get as, much attention because it's not as sexy, is risk management and wilderness safety. So I think part of the reason that I love to experience outdoor spaces is because I feel really competent and confident in these spaces. And like a tagline that I'll usually say is, I want to live to play another day. And the only way I can do that is if I know how to operate safely in these. And I want maybe the demographic I'm kind of shooting for is like women or non-binary or folks who don't feel comfortable in these spaces and also feel really intimidated going into learning about what it means to be safe in outdoor spaces when most of the participants are maybe like white or male or cis. And so I want to be able to teach these demographics and hold these courses and hold these spaces for people to feel really competent and confident, because that's how I've gotten most of my confidence, is like knowing how to exist safely in these spaces while having fun.
It's such a real confidence that comes from pushing yourself in the outdoors, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
It's real. It's not some kind of, and it's something that can be applied to so many different parts, and it can't really be taken away from you once you've been kind of pushed yourself harder than you thought you could.
Yeah.
So people listen to this, they're like, oh man, she's got it. She's on such this cool track. She's got it figured out. She's so confident. Like, what worries you? What concerns you? Like, you worry about finances, you worried about, I'm sure there are some things that make you a little uncomfortable. Anything?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So many things. I mean, there is instability and seasonality. It's something that I crave at times. It's something that I don't crave at other times. But yeah, I think there is wanting to have more stability, wanting to like have a home base. Financially, it can be hard to like always be switching around and transitioning from season to season. And so those are always worries for me. And I think too, which I don't know if I'll ever get rid of this, and I'm sure a lot of people feel this way, but like imposter syndrome, like, although I'm talking about these things and I know that I've done them and experienced them, I always am like, but am I qualified? Like, I don't know anything about it. And then people will ask me these things of like what I've done. And I'm like, okay, actually I have so much experience in these realms. And yet I still feel like I'm not qualified to continue the path that I just laid out for myself. So yeah, I think there are these pressures of like not feeling good enough. And I think at this age and perhaps my generation, like financial stuff is real and really hard. And sometimes like seasonal stuff is not an option for folks. It's kind of a privilege, and you kind of have to piece together how that can work for you. And there are resources to make that accessible for you, but it's hard to do that depending on, the constraints of your life.
Yeah. And especially if there's another more surefire thing waiting for you, like a job when I was in business school, these people went to work immediately after business school at Frito-Lay. And they pay you a lot of money, and you go and you do spreadsheets all day. And it's like, that can be very, especially if you have a lot of student loans or anything like that. Yeah. I mean, it's very hard to say no to that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the risk in that world, this is for a different podcast episode, but the risk is hidden in that world of those big jobs at big corporations. You think it's safe, but they can cut you in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
What books have been important to you?
Yeah, I've thought actually a lot about this.
That's become like when I record these things now, people are like, I was really nervous about the book section.
Yeah, I thought about it all weekend. Okay, so there's a couple top books that I think about all the time. Secret Knowledge of Water by Craig Childs.
I've not read it, but I hear great things.
So good. It's my favorite book ever, I think. I actually read it while I was on my road trip, living out my car.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And it like, I think it was a validation for why I wanted to study water in the West.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he writes just so like beautifully. It's like environmental literature, but it's just this beautiful story.
I think he's pretty funny in real life. I've emailed with him a bit, and he hangs around with David Gessner, who is very funny. And so I think they're kind of funny dudes.
Yeah, I think he's probably quirky. I've actually never met him in real life, but I think he's probably a quirky person. Another one that is tried and true in my mind, that maybe, I think it's influential, is The BFG by Roald Dahl.
We got that. I mean, it's sitting right over there.
Yeah.
Both of my girls love it. We talk about it all the time.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big Friendly Giant is what it stands for. And I think it's actually played a pretty big role in being silly in life and playful. And I think it's just so beautifully written.
All of that guy's work. We've got the whole collection, and my girls love them.
Yeah.
Just love them.
It's so good. And then another book that I'll mention, which is kind of weird. It's if you like weird stuff.
I do.
Okay. Yeah, I know you do. That's why I'm bringing it up.
The better.
Yeah. Okay. It's called The Desert Oracle. Have you heard of this? I'm pretty sure there's a podcast too.
There is. Yeah. It's got like a yellow thumbnail or whatever. Yeah. I've seen that. I don't know. Is it like a magazine?
I mean, it's actual book, and it's been released in the last couple of years by Ken Lane, and it's all these really weird stories about the desert.
Nice.
Anywhere from like UFOs to just like Joshua Tree, the tree, like the whole concept of the desert and how mysterious and kind of strange it is, but how like really incredible and resilient it is exists in this book. And it's just like a series of essays.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Those are all good. And I don't think other than the BFG, I haven't read those.
So put them on the list.
Yep, they're on the list.
Yeah.
Normally I ask people like parting words or whatever, but my question for you at the end is if you were talking to me when I'm wearing my cufflinks and suit and Merrill Lynch and reading Outside Magazine, like there are all these cool people doing all this cool stuff. And I'm not trashing Merrill Lynch. There are people there that is their calling in life.
Yeah, totally.
And they help people so much by helping them manage their money and be financially independent, the whole deal. But it's one of those things where if it either connects with you or it doesn't. And for me and my weird self, and it's a personality flaw, it did not connect with me. Yeah. And I wanted something different, but I was scared to make the change. Yeah. And it very well could have been that I just needed to change and go work at Frito-Lay, and I would have found my calling there. But because I didn't, I had to, I'm a weird dude, and I had to find my way to this podcast. But like, what's the advice to me or anybody who wants a more adventurous life, wants to try things a little bit outside the box that may not be, quote, safe, either physically or financially or whatever?
Right.
What's your advice to them?
Yeah. I think one is ask lots of questions. I think that has been a basis for everything I've done. I've done so many informational interviews where I've reached out to people who I'm like, I want to do what you're doing. Will you take 30 minutes to talk to me? And then have had really, really great conversations and insightful conversations. And I think there's something, I used to say I know a lot when I was younger. My dad hated it. He's like, you don't know though. I'm like, I know though. And I found out more that I don't know. There's so much I don't know. And I think being okay with that, like you don't know what it's going to look like if you just take a leap of faith, or you don't know what this job, all the details that it might have, the things that you love, the things that you don't love. And I think it's okay not to know. And I think that maybe leads to like the final point of like, just go for it. Like sometimes you do just have to try and not worry about what you'll look like or how old you are or like all the little details. Cause you do have to think about them, but they do fall into place. And you will find what you like and what you don't like. And then you can create and piece together a lifestyle or a path that really works for you and that you really love, instead of feeling like you have to fit into these boxes that were created there for no benefit for your own. Like you create your own box that you get to exist in, and you don't have to follow someone else's parameters.
I think that's awesome advice. And I think you're a perfect example of how it can work. Yeah, that's exactly why I wanted to have you on here. Cause like, it's just really, really cool to me to see how, what you've already done and then the trajectory of where you're going. And there's so many cool options. I just think those lessons, whether you're my age or just coming out of high school, whatever, I think the kind of framework you have used to approach these things, and framework may not be the right word because it's almost like there's a kind of putting yourself out there. There might not be a framework, like just going for it. I think it's so valuable. So anyway, super pumped to call you a friend. You're awesome and hilarious and keep up the good work.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Hey, it's Ed again. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. I know your time is valuable, so it means the world that you spend it listening. If you want to support the podcast and help it to continue to spread and grow, there are a few ways you can help. Number one, pass it along to a friend or share it on social media. Word of mouth recommendations are the most powerful way for ideas to spread, so I'd love it if you could share the podcast with a few pals who might enjoy it. Number two, you can go to Apple Podcasts and give it a 5-star review. Good reviews encourage the Apple overlords to suggest the podcast to others. So there's a link in the notes if you'd be so kind as to give it 5 stars. Number three, you can support the podcast financially via Patreon. and there are exclusive benefits for those who do, including a monthly behind-the-scenes newsletter, Mountain and Prairie stickers, live and recorded video chats with podcast guests, and much more. Number 4, I've also got 2 emails that I send out. The first is my weekly email called Good News from the American West, which I send out every Wednesday. It's only positive news, something we can all use a little more of these days. And my other email is my bi-monthly book recommendations email. One email every other month with 5, 6, 7, or 8 books that I've recently read and highly recommend. The thousands of people on both of these lists will vouch for me. No spam or other funny business. And number 5, finally, check out my online store for Mountain and Prairie stickers, shirts, and coffee mugs. I've got some really cool designs from Western artists with more on the way. So head to mountainandprairie.com/shop to check it all out. I'd love to connect with you. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, so look me up on either of those platforms by my name or through the links on my website. All right, that's it. Thanks so much for your support.